Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today. This is First Friday Spirit Talk. I'm Christopher Mitchell, I'll be your host, and today we're going to open up with our short astrology segment that I call Chris's Astrocast for the month, where we'll explore some of the current energies that you might be experiencing as shown through the tool of astrology. So this is a very busy month for astrology, and there's like a dozen notable and significant things going on that I could talk about, but I thought I would focus in on Venus retrograde to give you an energy that you can work with. So Venus is the planet that has to do with relationships and our values. It's commonly associated with love and the feminine and dating and all of that too. But more deeply, it's how we relate to everything in our life, our relationship to others, as well as our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to money, our relationship to exercise, whatever it might be. And it's also about our values, what we value, what's important to us. And a retrograde is when a planet in the sky seems to start moving backwards for a little while before it starts to move forwards again. And it's a time when we take that energy inwards and we reevaluate it and we work on it and we upgrade it. Retrogrades are here to help us level up the function of different planets. So with Venus retrograde, again, it's not just about relationships and dating stuff. There might be a period right now where there is evaluation, review, challenges and puzzles and stuff coming up in relationships to be untangled and worked with. But more broadly, it is about our values. And that's why Venus retrograde can bring up stuff about money, about budget, about health, about diet, about physicality, how we communicate, whatever it might be in your chart, in whatever house it's showing up, in whatever way it's showing up for the last couple of weeks. And for the next couple of weeks, there is this theme where we're going inwards and we're sorting out what's important to us, what we value, and getting that into alignment and integrity. The Venus retrograde started conjunct Pluto, which is a very transformational, deep planet. And so this retrograde has a very particular flavor to it of going into some of the deepest layers around these things and untangling some of what holds us back and sticks us up the most in what's important to us, and is an opportunity to get really clear and really free around some of the things that have had a lot of energy wrapped up in them for a long time. We're hitting the midpoint of the Venus retrograde, where it conjuncts the sun and it transforms from being an evening star to a morning star, and that's happening this weekend. So you might be experiencing a turning point in the energy where it goes from, it's kind of like the first half of the retrograde, you take the car engine apart to figure out what's not working, you find the problem. The second half of the retrograde is you're putting the car back together and then you can start driving it again. So there is a shift where you might find a period of insight or realization, and like you finally kind of figured out what all the last couple of weeks have been teaching you, and you can start bringing it forwards and putting that car back together. So it's a really special, significant time right now in the middle of this retrograde. And I just wanted all of you to know kind of what that energy was, so that you can do some meditation or reflection on how that's been showing up the last couple of weeks, what it might have been pointing you towards, and how you might be able to work with it, tighten it up, and bring that area of life into more alignment. And so with that, that is our astrology segment for January. Happy 2022, everyone, by the way. Welcome to the new year. And let's move on to the main event. This is First Friday Spirit Talk, where we get together on the first Friday of every month at noon to explore different spiritual and metaphysical topics in depth. I'm here with two of my favorite people, favorite psychics, favorite spiritual teachers, Reverend Ginny Brown and Scout Bartlett. And like I said, I'm your host and I'm the astrologer, Christopher Mitchell. This month, we're going to be exploring the theme of darkness and light, good and evil, sin and forgiveness, like the great duality and polarity of this earth realm. And to jump into that, I thought I would just pass the ball over to Ginny for starters to ask, how can we understand the idea of this polarity, of the idea of darkness and light? What is darkness and shadow? What is light? And how does it relate to this world we're in? Thanks. Big
Very.
question. I know.
Should be able to cover that in about 30 seconds.
Are you timing me? Let's go.
We're just defining our terms,
Yeah.
laying some groundwork.
Yeah. And I had no idea you were a mechanic. You know, like all these, like, very interesting, all these new aspects of Chris Mitchell that I'm learning about. What is light? Light is creative energy. In a lot of teaching, it relates to God, right? To the creative force that like permeates all things in the universe, that permeates existence. And darkness is the absence of light. And so when we talk about kind of like distilling what is shadows are formed when something dense is standing in the way of light. And so light has to kind of come around its edges, and then a shadow is cast, right? And it's really like a big part of like how we experience illusion on this plane, because everything that carries density is something we created, and is anything that we create real? Is a huge, metaphysical question. And so, when we start to kind of look at these themes, right, we can look to nature, we can look to spiritual teaching, we can look to psychology to kind of understand the role of like what the elusive nature of shadow is, and why it's created. And so it's a way for us, in my opinion, like shadow is formed so that we can see what is blocking the light. And whatever is blocking the light is what is ours to work with. So, we can go pretty deep into that. And I think you'll probably have questions that push us deeper down that rabbit hole. So I'll leave that very big question and its generality there. Scout.
I live in a world where everything is energy and every non-thing is energy as well. I 100% agree with that. Everything that casts shadow is this level, this world. We could look at it as we created it, or we created this scenario in order to be able to see the shadows. And one of my favorite commentaries that struck me along the way is that if we're looking at this as that word, it turns out that that word on an energy basis is just that word reversed. Everything that we experience as shadow is just simply energy that's not in alignment with the wholeness or the truth or source, whatever word we want to use. Everything that we experience as being shadow is just simply those energies that are not in alignment with source. And so they cast shadow rather than being in alignment with that. And the whole game here, I've been having to do a lot of reminding people that we don't get sent into incarnation as some kind of punishment any more than we dump out a box of puzzle pieces that aren't put together as the picture yet as some kind of punishment. We dump out the box of puzzle pieces because the point of it is the interesting part of putting all the pieces together until we've got the picture. We come in order to take on our part of the energy that's not in alignment, elevate its frequency, bring it into alignment, and move the whole system forward. So everything we experience as shadow. Was listening to Ram Dass the other day, a recording of Ram Dass, and one of his comments was, "We greet if we're in the path of consciousness, rather than oh man, there's something that pushed my buttons. It's like we can greet the moments when we notice our buttons got pushed. We can greet the moments when we go into it's never going to work, or I'm never going to be okay, or I'm not good enough, or they're bad, or they're mean, or they're evil. We can greet those as being yet one more place to notice that bit of bent energy inside of us is still there, and that we've been perhaps oblivious to it, and now we can focus on bringing it true."
like that example because there's a definitive shape to putting a puzzle together. At first it's chaotic and frustrating. You don't know where to start. The picture gets clearer and clearer, and it actually becomes more and more. I find it more fun towards the later half when you're locking the pieces in left and right. Though sometimes along the way, it's like, wait, there's a piece missing. There has to be a piece missing. There's no way. Where'd this piece go? Oh, there it is.
Blame the dog.
Um,
Yeah. And sometimes there's the, crap, why did I choose a puzzle that's nothing but sky?
yeah.
Why did I choose this set of lessons to dump out of the box this lifetime? I don't want to, oh, look, this piece goes together.
So in that vein, in that there's nothing wrong with having dumped out the puzzle. There's nothing wrong with having come here to experience shadow misalignment in order to lighten it and bring it into alignment. Well, that word wrongness, right? There's a way that we can feel as though we're wrong for the puzzle pieces that we've taken on. We're wrong for being in misalignment in the first place. So how can we work with kind of that layer, as well as perhaps understanding the general idea of mistakes or sin or misalignment in the first place without having to invoke like that feeling of guilt and wrongness in ourselves?
One approach is surrender to it and drink a lot. It's a
Did that in my
popular
20s,
approach.
didn't work.
I don't know that it's useful or pragmatic or beneficial, but it is a popular approach. Your turn, Ginny.
Any other ideas? More modern?
Plant medicines, perhaps, rather than drinking.
We'll
that's
get
not
into
a
that
full
in another
endorsement.
episode.
It's slipping out there. But
Oh,
Just
it's not
escape,
a full endorsement. I like
escapism.
that.
Yeah.
consciousness,
There's a
healing.
real truth that I love this, and I cannot guarantee the etymology of it, but I've seen it a lot. That the word sin originally came as an archery term, and all it meant was that if I'm way back here and I'm firing an arrow way out there to a target, there's some spotter that can actually see the target that's letting me know whether I'm on target or whether I have sin, whether I've gone off to the right or off to the left. And so the word originally meant off the mark. And I look at even some of the tenets of the early parts of the Catholic Church, where there was a confession, which meant once a week you wanted to review yourself and see where you were off track. And then you'd talk about where you were off track to the professional God person, whose job it was to stay on track originally before it, I do love the comment I heard that the the Christian missionaries set out to do good, and they did very, very well. But the original theory was once a week or once a day or whatever, go take time to review, am I on track or am I off? And go talk about it with a professional God person who could then say, you know what, that's probably going to take you about X amount of time for you to get your focus back in after you've been that dislodged into your thought process. And the timer was beads. Brilliant process about forgive myself because I've done it. I did my time of meditating and get myself back in alignment with that which is pure, and then go forth and let that be a building of a lesson rather than a carrying forward of all the trauma of I was wrong here, and then I was wrong here, and then I was wrong here. And I've noticed that, I don't know about you guys, but I've noticed that social isolation has been a spectacular time for self-review and coming up with a net equation of I was wrong. I have found myself being sort of amazed that, gosh, I must be pretty nifty that my friends still like me after that crap. And then I talk to them about it, and it's like, nah, that was no big deal. But in my brain, it was like, oh, And so it is coming back into that alignment, refinding your way to your own light, whatever your route is.
I feel like that same function that the priest or the whoever's holy person's job, whose job it was to stay in alignment and hold that alignment, that is also even further back in time with medicine people, shamans, and then even before that, perhaps just the act of like getting into an argument with like the other Neanderthal and then going for a walk in nature itself being the thing that then holds the alignment, processes it out, and then you go back. There's always been something for us to soak in and decompress in that way.
Yeah. We
Well,
miss
as you
Jenny.
can imagine, I'm going to take us to the Garden of Eden on this one.
Go for it.
When we
Yeah.
when we
I
talk
want
about
to.
sin,
Mhm.
we're talking about what created density. And the original sin, it wasn't that it was wrong to choose consciousness. That's to know what we're doing.
And it wasn't to
That's
badmouth apples.
it's the whole idea around choosing consciousness is to understand that some of our actions will drive mankind forward, drive our consciousness and our evolution forward, and some will be egotistical and hold and only serve a singular good, which is yourself, right? And so that's the difference between the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom and mankind, right? Animals are only acting out of instinct. Nothing an animal does, Friday is going to freaking love this, nothing that an animal does can be right or wrong. It just is. They're following instinct. Now, we may not like it, or we may want to kind of like focus their consciousness on doing something else, but they're truly acting from a place of their own like level of consciousness, which is before there is a knowing of right or wrong. We see how we project that onto them, right? Like our version of what is right, you do this here and you do that there, this is right and this is wrong, right? Because that's where our duality, that's where our choice and what it is that we're here learning. So the whole bit about biting the apple, about eating from the tree of consciousness, right, is looking at is coming into a conscious state of action around how you are a cause and everything has an effect from that cause. And so sin is the density that we attach to those choices. And so that density is what becomes a weight that we carry, like Scout is talking about. And so like when you have that kind of energy, right, like if you feel like you have sinned, it's already over. But how you're choosing to learn from it, how you're choosing to carry it with you, yeah, it's going to create shadow, it's going to create situations in your unconscious that you are unraveling over time, unless you can move forward with it and say this decision had a singular purpose, was focused on a singular motive. It wasn't focused on the elevation of all around me. And that's what Scout's talking about, that alignment. Either you're doing you're living from that state of consciousness, and we all kind of bounce back and forth in and out of that. It's a part of our evolution to understand what it means to fully come into that. But to act outside of that, when he's pointing to the word evil, it is to only to kind of justify the means for a singular good.
And I'll just
Ginny,
toss in any of y'all that have stuck around this far into this, whether it's when we're doing it live or the recording, you're very aware of the fact that there's a moment in time when we start to recognize that we're the ones setting up our repeating cycles, and that we have repeating cycles and that they come from inside of us. And there's a real turning point of it all happens to me, it all happens to me. Oh, I've seen this before, that was me. I've seen this before, that was me. I've seen this before, that was me. And sometimes it's a really frustrating place because I'll notice that I get into something that pushes my buttons and I want to just stay grumpy and mad and repeat it in my head and justify it. And in the middle of that, there'll be the part of me that remembers, oh yeah, this is me. I'm me. I have a choice whether I stay in this pre-patterned, pre-programmed grumpy, or whether I go do the things I know that bring my light back into me, and whether I come back. And that's always such a miserable thing because I'm so much comfortable in that grumpy till I realize that I'm actually in charge of it, and it's high time I flip the light switch back on.
and it also flips at some point where it's like I'm highly uncomfortable with the ramifications of the grumpy, and now I'm motivated towards the lighter choices.
True. The grumpy payoff gets less and the light payoff gets bigger.
Yeah. Ginny, kind of following up on what you were just talking about, I'm wondering, something that just came to me is like, is there ever a reason for us to hold on to mistake or guilt, shame within ourselves, or is it just a trick of the mind and the ego that kind of keeps us looping.
As long as we're holding on to something, we haven't learned from it. Or we're not letting ourselves, there's part of us that really still like wants that piece of candy on the shelf or something, you know, like we're not really, we're holding ourselves back from walking into the light, right? And so there is no purpose of it, of holding on to those things. There is, you know, truth is like if I write it on a piece of paper and say, this is now my truth, right? Like it's not even worth the paper it's written on if I don't integrate it into my actions. And we hesitate around that. We hesitate around that because there's a part of us that fears it. You know, so but once things are integrated, there's no point. And typically they don't even have a viscosity to them anymore. Like they're not weighted, they're not carrying a density. But you know, it's important to, you know, be gentle with ourselves as we're integrating, because it doesn't happen overnight. You know, it's a process. You know, sometimes some things need a gentle integration over time, and other things it's just like, you know what, I got to knock it off. I need to step forward, you know, and it takes maybe courage or bravery or, you know, one of the 7 graces to move us forward. So, you know, it is a process in that. But what I see is the reason we're still carrying that baggage is because we're afraid to let it go. Or, you know, in some instances, we just don't know who we are without it.
So when we use it up by letting it inform the choices we'd rather make, by bringing its lessons into our being, and knowing within ourselves that we've got it, like we've got what we learned from that, then we don't need to hold that uncomfortable feeling about or within ourselves anymore. That's just kind of a corrective or a teacher, and when we learn from it, it no longer will grip into or needs to grip into our space and permeate us.
I want to touch in with a little tiny bit of a rework on that. If we're still aware that we got it and we don't need to hold on to that anymore, we're still holding it. A description of and I see it in a lot of teachings, but when one reaches that state of being all, if one tries to describe the state of being all, you're out of it again. If one tries to grab on and hold on to that state of being all, you're out of it again. It's all toward a level of flow and release. And so there's a really funny place, and it's a phrase I've been using a lot with some of my client work, which is that pointing out to them that you have successfully integrated this, everything there was for you to learn from that. And that's sometimes where we get stuck with stuff is, well, we're hanging on to it as if we're going to like pull more threads out of it to learn more out of it. You already got it. Whatever there was for you to learn from that, you got. Somebody else might have learned other stuff. You might be able to make up stories of other stuff you would have wished you would have learned it. But everything there was for you to learn from that, you have learned, and you've successfully integrated that. So you can now release the mind chatter, the grip, the control, the loop. You can now release the loop beyond your level of attachment to it. And just as Ginny just pointed out, beyond your level of identification with it. We'll identify ourselves as, oh, you know me, I always. You know me, I'm the one who. You know me, I. You know, everybody who knows me knows that I'm late. Everybody who knows me knows that I'll do it in the last minute. Everybody that knows me knows that I'll get grumpy if you don't feed me. Whatever. And we'll hang on. Well, that was sort of exposing. we'll hang on to these self-descriptions as if they were our real identity. And as it turns out, they're not.
So we'll know we've got it when we're no longer checking within ourselves about whether or not we've got it. You know, we will have used it up when it no longer comes up or something like that.
Kind of.
Well, you find yourself in moments where it's tested, and then you see how far you've come.
And there's no test to it.
It's not a mental, you know, like trust doesn't happen here. Trust happens in kind of like really seeing what you're made of now, or what you choose now, or what, you know, like how you've evolved, you know.
That's some of the fun of having kids around. When you watch what punches kids into confusion or upset or meltdown, and then if you reach back and remember when that would have caused you meltdown, or what else would have caused you meltdown that you've just flown or flowed through, without it even hooking on anything. You know, you ran your cosmic Velcro across a smooth surface and nothing got hooked. Sorry, Ginny, excuse me.
All good.
I think this is a quick one that I can fit in before our midpoint meditation, but we'll see. Is there a shadow side to everything and a light side to all shadow? Like any subject that you might call up, sexuality or relationships or self-expression or whatever, does everything have a shadow to it? And does all shadow that we find in ourselves have a light to it?
Ginny, that's yours.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yes. Here on this planet, absolutely. Everything is dual. Everything has a dual nature to it. You know, what is right for one group of people is wrong for another. And this is how we come to understand and work with duality. And so, yes, and it depends on, you know, for some, you know, groups, you know, homosexuality is wrong and bad. For some groups, it's how they identify and how they love and connect, right? So we won't find a universal truth between those two, but we know at their tension point they meet. And it's just a like a teaching ground or a dojo, right? To understand differences, to understand sameness, and to understand that nothing lives outside of all, that we are all interconnected, right?
And we could think of love as only having a light side, but you can also recognize for some people, if they have a huge wave of the experience of love, they go joyful. For some, if they have a huge experience of a wave of love, they go tearful. For some, if they have a huge experience of a wave of love, they go out of town. Whoa, let me get away from that. Let me shut down. Let me make sure I'm safe. Let me not have that rock my world. And that's just love. Some people will have a huge experience of love, and because they need the approval that they think they have to be able to have that experience, they'll go start a war just to prove how solidly manhooded they are. That was gendered, sorry. Girls can start wars too. I'm not trying to limit anybody.
Helen of Troy, baby.
I don't think she started it. I think she was like an objectified justification for it.
All right,
We'll
so we
see.
could go to Joan of Arc.
Progressive millennial popping in for a second there.
Or every other woman in the background who like egged somebody on to go do a war just to, like, you know, go get them some ruby or something.
Mm.
So we credit both teams can start wars. Even up. We're fair now.
Hearing in there, it reminds me of something I've heard, that there's two sides to every stick, you know, or a stick has two sides. Is which one are you going to hold on to or focus in on, you know? Well, I guess we're at the middle-ish. I can't fit in
Gosh,
another
we could be
question
early
before
for
it.
once.
What was that?
We could be early.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. It's Ginny, it's your turn this month to lead us in meditation. So here at First Friday Spirit Talk, in the middle of every episode, we take a short 5-minute break to tune in, and we alternate between Ginny and Scout leading a meditation. So this month it is Ginny's turn. Do you have a light and dark themed meditation for us?
How'd you know? So yeah, wherever you are, just go ahead and get comfortable in your chair. And together, let's just take a nice big deep breath. And exhale. And let your eyes close. And into that vast and open space, say hello to yourself. And listen for the way that you answer back. Maybe it's a feeling, a sound, a knowing. And say hello to your creative energy and see it as a ball of light. Notice its color, movement, and see what it wants to create, what in this moment feels inspired. And notice any density, anything that stands in a way. What shape does it take? A wall, a monster, a critic. And ask yourself, what do I need to do to bypass this block? And see your light following that path, cutting through those dense layers. And ask yourself, what do I need to do in order to put this into action? Bring it to a tangible place outside of this meditation. Commit to it, and then let it go. And when you're ready, open your eyes and end your meditation.
When you're ready.
Just thought it was appropriate to leave a pause there for all of us in the recording. That was the best one you've led us through yet, Ginny, in my opinion. Thank you. That was really informative. I just stop in the middle and take a note for session work later.
Which is not to be taken as, gee, you finally did a good one.
Not at all. Oh. So, 1 second, I hit something on my computer. I'm lost on my
Just
screens.
dive in for a second, Chris, while you get your brains back inside your head. I just want to share this because I've been doing a lot of work with this, and I know I've talked about it before, but I ran into a quote a while back that's been around for quite some time that was very simply, I forgive them, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. And I noticed that I had a lot of work to do with that one, just to really get the depth and the understanding. The first thing I translated to was, in my world, peace is releasing the places where we've held a clench or a grip in our mind or in our body or in our energy field. So I forgive them, not based on whether or not they deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve open and free aliveness and energy flow. And then I came across, and I laugh about this because it's like so many things. Once you realize it, it's simple and obvious, but before you realize it, it's just blank. I came across the recognition that the next phase of that work for me is I forgive me, not based on whether or not I deserve forgiveness, but specifically because I deserve peace. And that's been a cascade of walking through and looking at the places where I've held evidence against me, where I've held wrongness about me, where I've held judgment about me, where I've contained myself for fear I would be either too out there or too much or too whatever or too weird, because, I'm pretty out there, my estimation. A whole level of everywhere in me that I can find either mental or energetic or physical tightness, to bring my focus there and bring a release of whatever thoughts go with that, to come up current and allow myself I have successfully learned everything there was for me to learn from that one. If there's more for me to learn, I'll do it again. But to be releasing all of that piece, all of those pieces of history. And then I always dive in to point out that forgiveness is not the same as condoning. It's not, I forgive you, so you're allowed to do it again. It's not, you were really wrong, but I'm going to be the bigger person and forgive you. It's releasing all of our clench around it and turning their stumbles and their life paths over to them, but honoring that our stumbles and our life path have brought us to here, now, making the realizations we're making now. That was it.
Thought you might have frozen for a second there. So not only do I have my brains back, but I just had like a Wizard of Oz moment where I realized I had them the whole time. And
And
pause
other
for
people
Scout's
that
laugh.
have these pieces of paper have no more brains than you, little one.
So I think the place I want to start the second half of our segment here is, there's this idea in creation and manifestation and spiritual circles that, sometimes you hear about it as spiritual bypassing or positive focus. There's pros and cons to it. We do want to focus positively, but sometimes we can get the impression or the understanding that it's not good to think about or notice or focus on dark or negative things. And I'd really like to just explore that for a second. It's like, is it best to avoid thinking about or seeing darkness, or do we somehow need to notice it, go there, see it, feel it, experience it in order to come out of it? And is there some middle ground where sometimes it's important to go there, but other times maybe we don't need to stay there anymore? Yeah, what do you want to do with that, Scout?
Was just listening to, again, a Ram Dass lecture, coincidentally, and he was talking about the path of renunciation, which he said, and I loved how he phrased it, so I'll borrow his phrasing, although I'm paraphrasing, which was, if we think that the point of moving forward spiritually is always staying high, then what we begin to do is we renounce or we avoid or we push away anything that might bring us into those deeper or heavier levels. In his case, his joke was, and I had a similar experience, was that for a very long time after I shifted into doing this rather than having a W-2 job, my dad, who was 100% W-2 idealistic, would ask, have you got a job? Got any leads on a job? And I would notice there'd be a piece of me that would get worried about me, as if that really indicated I was off track. Ram Dass describes that in his own experience of it would bring him down. So then he started staying away from his dad, which is not exactly what I did with that. But it's not about the point being staying high. I would phrase it in my own language. The point is remembering high, not the organization, but the experience, remembering high, and remembering when you're not there to be able to release the grip, the weight, the depth of the piece you're stuck on, to come back to your clarity, but to experience all of it, not to close it down. Again, a thought that I roll through the front of my brain and speak about is not the creative thought. If it was, when every time they did a lotto drawing, everybody would win, because everybody's had the I want to win the lotto thought, I assume. That it wouldn't then, because it would get boring. You know, there's an $800 million prize and everybody gets 63 cents. Once a week, what the heck? 3 times a week now, I think. Not life-changing, but it's really about the thoughts that get stuck in the back of our mind. I call it compartmentalized. There's lots of other theories, but the traumas and the distresses and the loops that go over and over and over and over, yeah, I'm crazy. They go over and over and over and over in the back of our mind. To bring those forward, allow them in our awareness, and then allow ourselves to step in and embrace that part of ourselves as also being us, so that we can release the clench we had about that thing that we thought was a wrongness.
So bringing them up and out, it doesn't actually create from them, but releases us from creating from them.
Nicely said.
Thank you. Ginny, do you want to weigh in as well?
I'll just add to a different side of it. You know, you want to focus on what you want more of and put your energy there. So if you focus on problems, you're going to create more problems, because that's what energy does.
Which makes it good to be a problem solver. Wrong.
You know, if I want the planet to heal from the climate change issues, right? I focus on what I want more of, right? And that would lead me down a path of buying local. That would lead me on a path of, less packaging. That would lead me on a path to an electric car or public transportation. That would, you know what I mean? Like there's like this, if I just focus and put my energy exactly on creating the world that I believe is in, the greatest good for all of us, and actually apply my actions towards it, versus it just being lip service, then, you're actively creating a better world, and you're using that principle correctly. It's not about spiritual bypassing. I think what you two came up with there on the, emotional and psychological level is very, keen. So, on the other side of it, it's just focusing on what you want more of only. The problems will solve themselves if you apply and put yourself there.
There's a piece in there that if I'm focused on the what I want more of, it allows me to notice whatever side mind chatter there is that would be not that.
Mm-hmm.
And then acknowledge the not that chatter, not in a bring it forward and sit in it, but to step into that part of me and bring that part of me on board too. Notice the not chatter, step into that part of me. Don't, oh God, I don't want to know that. Because our mind will trick us into, you don't want to know this, it becomes Jack Nicholson. You couldn't stand the truth. Not that that was Nicholson, but sort of his line. Our mind will trick us into, oh, you can't know this. You don't want to know this. This is wrong. You couldn't deal with this. When what we want to do is let ourselves embrace that part of our consciousness and bring it on board. Because one of the most creative parts is all of the chatter in the background of our subconsciousness. Reprogramming that subconscious chatter through a steady practice. Oops, she's up there. Through a steady practice of redevoting to this is my focus. Through a steady practice of noticing, even a steady practice of hearing that internal conversation and interrupting it. To bring that subconscious chatter back on board.
This is where the inscription atop the Oracle of Delphi, right, was know thyself. Don't be afraid to look and go inward. Or the Joseph Campbell, darkest cave holds the greatest treasure. The dragons that guard the gate of nirvana. There's lots of ways of saying it, but that by going there, by seeing ourselves more clearly, we can unlock and release energy that's trapped in those loops and bring it into present time.
And then Jung really nailed it with those parts of us that we seek most to keep hidden are actually what we have most in common. So we don't have to run from them. That was Carl, by the way, not Steve.
For sure. And Ginny, just to reflect back on what you were saying too, it's the be the change, to vote with our action for the world that we want, but not to push against the one that we don't want, to plant a tree but not throw tomatoes and get bunched up yelling at the people who are cutting them down, or something like that.
Exactly.
So I think we already covered a lot of ground on this in the first half when we were exploring the nature of light and shadow, and talking about bringing shadow into alignment. But is there anything that either of you want to kind of add on the subject of how to relate to and understand the shadow and the darkness within ourselves? Is it something, in working with it, is it something that needs to be healed and accepted and understood, or does it need to be disciplined and starved out and brought into place?
Punished and treated as evil.
Yeah, it's kind of a leading question, but because I don't think the second half is probably the answer.
Yeah, the shadow is just the rejected self, and learning to love all of you is key. I like to tell this metaphor in client session about, if you, whatever we're taught brings gets us time and attention and love, we tend to do more of, and we reject the parts of ourselves that don't get that attention. And so, if you were just jumping into the pool and doing backflips and minding your own business and just having a good time doing that, and then all of a sudden you did a cartwheel, and all the adults go, ooh, ah, woo, oh, look at that, oh, then you stop just jumping in the pool and doing cannonballs. You start doing more and more cartwheels. And that part of yourself that you leave behind in that moment, that rejected self, is just seeking attention from you, is seeking for, us to understand our own innocence, to return to innocence. This is what takes us out of a world that's dual, and so, when we really start to understand and love all sides of ourselves, we heal. It's not about, this part of me is wrong for that. We need to see, even an action where we've caused another person harm, it was innocent and it was coming from a place of love in some form or fashion. So when we really start to kind of embody that and see that and bring it back home, we change.
One of the tricky parts I've witnessed in the human experience is recognizing the human experience. Used to be a really popular thing on sophisticated stereo systems, that they would have these frequency modulators, and maybe you turn these frequencies up and maybe you turn these frequencies down, and you'd have this array of knobs that were set to tune that frequency allegedly to the room you were in or to how you preferred hearing it. And it would be, all these little pieces you're adjusting in the music, which they still have in recording studios, but home studios, not so much. Everything you ever witness a human being do, every response you ever witness a human being have or express, however, verbally, violently, facially, you have that in you too. And there's a level of shifting from disgust to compassion to recognize that everything any human being has ever done that was either exquisitely lovely or incredibly cruel, you have that in you. The whole spectrum. If you really look in the testaments that got selected to be called the Bible, they actually quote their lead teacher, Jesus, as having said, all these things I do, so shall ye do, and greater shall ye do in the name of God your Father. And then that gets squashed a lot, but it's in there. So the one ascended master in body said, yep, what I'm doing you can do, as have all of them. And every evil and cruel person, again, evil versus it's just inverted energy flow. Every evil and cruel person has also figured that everybody else would do this too if they had the option. So I have to, I evil unto others before they can evil unto me. Recognizing that all of that is in there, and that the game is not, ooh, I need to not have that part. The game is, I need to turn up the dial on these frequencies that I prefer and turn down the dial on these frequencies that are not in alignment with who I am. We're just, oh God, everybody deep breath, if you would, please. I apparently just did something profound. I felt that roll through like a wave. It's recognizing that we are a container of everything that is live. And sometimes the energy is inverted and we're being that part of that energy, but we're a container of all of it. And we're bringing all of it into that alignment with what is live, live, love, all those good L words. Don't go too far, Chris. We'll just stay with
like eat, laugh, pray, something like that.
There we go. What we're doing is we're bringing all of that. We are all of that. Every one of us is all of that. And we can turn our focus to that which is our adoration, that which is our love, that which is our aliveness. And we can own the parts of us that would bring forth the other part and love that part of us and come back to us being that which is our adoration, that which is our love, that which is our aliveness. And that's the practice, dancing that until we dance that on a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger stage. So that we allow our energy field, we own and allow and trust and honor and vulnerable up our energy field enough to let our energy field radiate out through us and through everything around us, knowing that it will affect everything around us and that will then, it will effect everything around us, which will then reflect every tweaky part in us that we haven't quite owned yet. And then walk through the world with your energy expanded and open, with your heart expanded and open. And when you notice the places that aren't, love the daylights out of those places in you and bring it back to that. When you notice you're crunching down about the evil in some other behavior, very few evil people ever got convinced to not be evil by somebody being evil at them. Watch your James Bond movies, you know? Although, you know, it really is about the examples that you lit, the place where you place yourself and what you allow yourself to be, even while the world is what the world is. I'm going to say it again, sorry. But the place you place yourself and allow you to be, even while the world is what the world is. Yeah, Ginny, you had feedback on that one.
Would demons and like manifested evil through, you know, like a really like prominent force, like a Hitler or, you know, a cult leader, or, you know, not all cult leaders are bad, but that is the reject and the rejected self, and the parts of us that we have suppressed that manifest into those things. Darkness needs our attention. And just because you don't think about it or you kick it out of town doesn't mean that it's been dealt with.
And that's what we get to see is whenever there is a leader like that comes forward, there's a large cluster of people that are sort of like, oh, thank God, I finally found my tribe. I'm okay with these people.
Well, they find a sense of belonging. It's not necessarily about alignment of ideals as much as a sense of safety and belonging. That's what tribe offers. But the, you know, evil and demonic forces and things like that is just the suppressed and rejected parts of ourselves that we've been giving attention to, subconsciously or in action.
Ginny, can I jump in there?
Mm-hmm.
This is a big topic. This is probably a future full Spirit Talk episode topic, but I think to round out our discussion for today, it's important to just touch on it for a minute or two each before we wrap up. The idea of darkness out there that can get us, you know, negative energies, entities, dark things, etc. Are we vulnerable to? Do we need to protect ourselves in some way from something like that as we're aligning in our lives? Like I said, it is probably a whole episode unto itself later down the road, but just to kind of bring that into the conversation we've been having today so that we can feel more secure in these processes that we've been talking about. Is there anything either of you would like to share about that?
The best protection is to turn on your light. It's not to hide away from the things in society that you fear. I had a client who was very political and was focused on Hillary Clinton's campaign. And she really was just focused on getting numbers on that side. And then when Trump was elected, her homework was to go and like expose herself to people who voted the opposite way because she couldn't understand it. Felt like there was a huge darkness that was coming over. And I was like, well, you're not going to get anywhere just labeling that. You have to get to know them, understand where they're coming from, understanding why they feel marginalized or forgotten or whatever, and that's the work. The more you try to protect yourself from something, often the stronger it gets because you're leaking energy towards it. You're giving it the most magnetic energy there is, which is fear. So if you fear something, in a way that feels safe to you, or safer to you, is to find the courage within to approach. That's both internally and externally, because whatever's out there is in here.
There's a really interesting aspect about protection, and I'm going to see if I can make the camera be on my side. But if indeed, if something were coming at me that was this shape, and if coming at you, if something was coming at you on the other side of the camera that was this shape, and you needed to, and you were trying to protect to hold it out, you would have to hold your energy in the opposite to hold it out. But on your side of the energy, you're holding your energy in the exactly same shape. So to do a focus on protection is actually us holding our energy in the shape we're wanting to protect against. What I've found instead is exactly what Ginny said. The same way to protect me from the monsters under the bed is to either like lift the bedspread or turn on the lights and go, yep, no monsters, we're good. We're golden, or at least all the monsters under there are familiar monsters. And so, okay, we're all good. Everybody settle down, go to sleep. It's really about it's about bringing forward our light. And each time we feel intruded on, bringing forward our light and letting it go through everything around us, even if the thing around us is an angry person. Because a lot of what draws people into alignment with a concept that's off is that they've had a part of them that's off, and now they finally feel like this is a grouping that would accept them with that particular offness. All of the major spiritual teachings talk a lot about expanding our light sufficiently where we're not deciding who is or isn't acceptable. Everybody's acceptable if they can stand to be in the light. And if they can't stand to be in the light, then, they're going to kind of move away from it. But the key place is that if my focus is being my light through my entire energy field, I'm not adapting it to whatever's going on around me. I'm not shaping it to whatever shape is around me to give the complement of that. I'm practicing and building my ability to be me and my energy field unconditionally, which is another word for regardless of circumstances. God, I'm on wordplay today. Sorry, guys.
That's great. I love that. I think it's so important to understand the idea that if we're holding that alignment and that light and that vibration, then whatever can't match you will just move away from us. And what you were talking about too, I got images of like Monsters Inc. or that Where the Wild Things Are book. It's like just they're not bad, they're just misunderstood. We might not want to hang out with them, but just friendly monsters, also trying to do their best with what they know.
They've been made monsters.
Okay, well, this was a good one. That brings us to the end of this month's Spirit Talk. We'll be back next first Friday at noon. My name is Christopher Mitchell. I'm an astrologer. You can hit me up at unlimitedastrology@gmail.com to ask me about the things that I do, schedule a session, anything like that. And I'll let Ginny and Scout say their piece too, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, everyone.
I'm Reverend Ginny Brown. You can catch me at my website right there, one-on-one sessions, couples, animals. You can just bring it my way. Happy to work with you. Take care.
And I highly recommend her. I'm Scout Bartlett. you can catch up with me on my website, which is right there. One of the things I tithe into the world is that I fund and produce a radio program that broadcasts Monday and Wednesday in San Francisco, but we stream it live when it's broadcasting 6 a.m. Monday, Wednesday. But we also archive it in my website, hundreds of hours there, and that's available no charge. That's just one of the things we fund is my tithing to the universe. I do have a small embarrassing side comment. I had made announcements that I would be restarting my 12 cycle mystery school and that I'd be restarting it on the first Friday of each month, but my schedule made that weird this month. So the first Friday of this month for my evening workshop will be next Friday. But I'll be doing an evening workshop the first Friday of every month and the second Friday of this month on a cycle of 12 topics of self-understanding. The information will be up on the website. This will be posted up on YouTube. And if you're watching it on YouTube, please go click subscribe. In fact, gather up your entire Outlaw Needlepoint gang and get them all to go in and click subscribe on it. And we'd love it if they'd listen, but we don't care. We just need the numbers right now to open up some features that would be available to us as soon as our numbers click up. To every single one of you, I want to ask you all a huge favor, two huge favors. Sorry. One, treat yourself as a loved one, because you truly are. And the second one is just no matter where on earth you are, notice it's a perfect day to have a great day on purpose. Love you.